All right, everyone, welcome to the quickest croissants made at home possible. If you want croissants right now, go to the store. If you want to make them yourself, but you do not like all the waiting, follow this video and the recipe in the description, and you will have croissants in less than 3 hours with relative ease. Croissants really are not that hard to make, and they're pretty straightforward. So let's get started. We are going to start off by making our base. So we are going to add our yeast here to start. And then we're also going to add some warm water. You are looking for about 100-degree water. So if you boil some and kind of let that cool off a little bit, that will be enough for you. And we are also going to add sugar to this mixture as well. And then we're going to set that aside and let it get frothy. And give it a little stir as well and get everything incorporated with a fork works best for this. Next, we're going to start the rest of our dough. So go ahead and measure out your flour, and then go ahead and measure out your milk and just microwave it for about 30 seconds or so. And after it is microwaved, you can go ahead and incorporate your sugar to it and your salt as well. And then go ahead and give that a mix and make sure that those are dissolved into your warm milk mixture. Then pour that into your flour and then pour the yeast in after it's gotten frothy, and then go ahead and add the oil as well. And it really only takes the time to get the milk ready to get the yeast ready. So once that's all in the bowl, go ahead and mix it with a wooden spoon, and then when you cannot mix it any further with the spoon, go ahead and give your hands a good washing and start kneading this dough. And with the amount of flour you have, you shouldn't really have to add anything more. It will be a little bit sticky, but that's fine. And just go ahead and knead this for, I'd say, about 2 to 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be too long. And your dough is not going to look beautiful, but you just want to make sure everything is incorporated and more or less even. And this is approximately what your dough should look like when you need to let it rest here. So you're gonna go ahead and let it rest for about an hour. Go ahead and put a towel on top of it to cover it, and just set it out on your countertop. You will also want to have some butter. I've tried all different techniques here to get the butter ready. I tried freezing it overnight and then hitting it with the cheese grater, and then I also tried the food processor with the grater settings. I didn't really like any of these processes, and it creates a ton of dishes for you to clean up. So I wouldn't suggest these. I would say you can just leave your butter in the fridge, and then when it comes time to actually put your butter into the dough, just slice the butter into kind of thinly done slices, and you can just layer it on top of your dough then. So if you really want to, this food processor method works decently, and you do get a nice shred of your butter, but it creates a lot of extra work, and we're doing this short method because we're lazy. So just go ahead and cut your butter with a knife once we get to that step. So our dough is rising right now. And while your dough's rising, that's a good time to get some dishes done. And here's how the dough looks once it has risen. It might about double in size or so. And then you're going to go ahead and put it in the freezer for just about 20 minutes. And while you are letting that chill, you can go ahead and bake. Pull out your mat here and also prepare your baking sheet. I like this little soap mat thing. This just makes everything bake a lot more evenly and doesn't get anything stuck on. And you can also get, if you use a mat to roll out your dough, you can do that. Some people just like to use a granite surface, but we're going to go ahead and pull the dough out after punching it down, and you can flour it real quick. And then you're just going to start rolling it out really as large as you can. And you'll see on the instructions, there'll be some vague dimensions on there, but I just like to kind of make the dough roll out as large as you can. And it'll almost feel like if you're doing like a thin crust pizza dough. That's kind of what you're looking for. So roll it out to a big rectangle and just try and make it even all the way across, more or less. The recipe I have here is one that has been doubled and altered a little bit. So you will get quite a few croissants out of these depending on the size you do them in. So go ahead and roll this out all the way And it doesn't really have to be a perfect rectangle, just as long as you have one side longer than the other, because we will be folding this up and then we will be incorporating the butter into it as well. So keep rolling, and then the rolling will get more difficult as it goes on because you are creating layers and you're making it a little bit tougher as you're going. So just keep muscling through it, and getting that rectangular shape is helpful as you go on, but not completely necessary. And then once you have a large enough shape as you desire, you can go ahead and start spreading the butter out on top. So if you were to at this point have your butter cut into little square cuts, almost like pepperoni on a pizza, you can just place it all out around kind of the top 2/3 here. So you can see I'm just kind of plopping it around and just trying to get an even layer of butter. The proper way, they have these kind of like sheets of butter, or they're a lot more moldable. But we're making do here, and you just want to have your butter more or less evenly spread out along the top of the dough. And then you're going to fold up the bottom half that doesn't have anything on it, and then you're going to fold over the top half onto that part, and then you're going to do the rolling process all over again. So we are making layers of butter within our layers of dough here, and we are going to start rolling. And one thing that you will most likely notice is that the butter can get stuck onto your rolling mat. I wouldn't worry about that too much. If it does get stuck a lot, don't be afraid to add a little bit more flour to help smooth out the process. But you'll see how the butter kind of gets incorporated later. So just keep on rolling it out here. And then once you have it rolled out to basically the same size as you started, you're going to fold it into thirds one more time and then put it in a plastic bag. I just used in like an old bread bag, something that's kind of long. You can alternatively put this on a sheet and just have it wrapped up, but having it in a bag, I believe is important to not have it all dried out. So go ahead and put this in the bag and then throw it in the freezer for about 15 minutes or so. And then after your 15 minutes have elapsed, you are going to pull it out of your bag again. And you're going to repeat the exact same steps. So pull out your dough, roll it out again, get it back to that original size, keep rolling it up, rolling it out, and then guess what? You're going to fold it in thirds again. And it doesn't really matter what direction you're going for your folding in thirds. You're going to create layers regardless, so don't worry about the specifics of it. And then after you fold it in thirds again, go ahead and roll it out again. And then guess what you're going to do after that? You are going to fold it up again after you get it back out to your original size. So keep on putting it out and then fold it in one more time. And then you're going to stick it back in the freezer for another 15 minutes. And the reason that we put it in the freezer is to keep the butter in its buttery state. So we don't want the butter to melt into the dough. So that's why we don't melt the butter beforehand and put it in, but we're kind of creating individual layers of butter. So we keep putting it back in the freezer to allow the butter to firm back up, and we're just altering the state. So if you have like a giant freezer room that you can do this in, then boom, you're perfect. But for all the regular people, we have to put it back in the freezer here. So that's why you can't really skip these waiting times, but putting in the freezer about as quick as you can go here. So once we get it back out of the freezer after waiting those 15 minutes, we can start preheating our oven here to 425. And then you can go ahead and cut your dough amount in half, and you can put that part in the fridge for now. And so we're just working with the first half because this is a bit of a doubled batch, and this will just give you more time to work. And you can see all those layers that we've built up here. So we're going to do similarly, same thing, roll it out as much as you can. This will be a smaller rollout because we are working with half the amount of dough, but you still want to try and roll it out as much as you can. And then you can really just swing this part. It depends on the size of the croissant you want to go for. They don't grow a ton in the oven, so try and roll it out as much as you can into that rectangular shape. And then what I end up doing is I kind of cut it in half, and then I'm going to be cutting them into squares and then into triangles. And you can see my technique here. I do kind of use a better technique on my future cuts, because a lot of that butter that I was talking about gets pushed into this backing mat, and then it's kind of hard to take them off. But you'll just make a whole bunch of triangles, and these ones are a little bit small, but your croissants will taste the same and delicious regardless. And so you'll make as many triangles as you can out of these, and you can definitely make larger ones. And this is your time to experiment with different sizes of what you want. And so you will cut the dough out into these separate bits, and then you'll roll them out before you roll them up. And so you'll grab your rolling pin, and then you'll just start rolling them up from the wide side to the narrow side. And it's pretty simple. And if there was anything that you wanted to put inside these, now would be the time. So I did hot dogs in one of them, and then I did semi-sweet chocolate chips in another batch for the second half. And then I just left the initial half all plain. So you just do that with all the rest of them. And when you're working in these halves, you can go ahead and start one batch in the oven while you're working on the other ones. And just before you put them in the oven, you will want to do an egg wash on them, which is just one egg and some water mixed together. And then you'll just brush that on top, and then you stick them in the oven for 15 minutes and you're donezo. So pretty much the minimum amount of waiting time, the minimum amount of rising time. And I will say they do taste like the slightest bit doughier than the first version I made, where I waited a lot longer. But I know that if I wanted something super authentic, I'd have to go somewhere else, and I don't care about the authenticness. So these are fun to make without the giant hassle, and especially if you're putting something else in them or putting some jam on them and aren't just eating them plain, then you are in for a treat. So I would definitely encourage anyone who is interested in trying croissants out and trying out this 3-hour method. It's a lot quicker than anything else I've been able to find, and it's been tried and tested. So the full recipe will be in the description. I always recommend printing out the recipe. It makes it a lot easier, and I am interested to see if anyone does try this, because it's pretty simple, and I think it's kind of a good next step for any bakers out there. If you've only done sugar cookies, these are a little bit more complex, but you don't have to be too patient with this style. So go ahead, give it a try. Thank you for watching. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But everything else should be in that cooking directions in the description. As I said, I'm being a broken record right now. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will catch you all in the next video.